of them just left a small imprint somewhere or a small statue, but we had a very wealthy mayor back those days, and he wanted to be remembered, yes, that he won't be forgotten. That's why he said, okay, I will leave a monument behind that Miltenberg will love, and we have good use of it anyway because we have fresh water. And so he gave the order to a stonemason, and the stonemason went to work, and after a while he figured, well, it takes me much longer than I thought it would. So he went to the mayor's house, and the mayor used to live in a stone building with the scaffolding now over there, and he lived there, and so he went to the mayor's house and he asked for a deposit. And the mayor said, well, you're done? No, it will take me maybe 4 to 6 more weeks, but I promised I'd do the job, I'll finish the work. And the mayor said, well, you're not done, you don't get paid. So the poor man had no choice but to go home and finish the job. And when he went back to the mayor's house from the staff, and a couple of weeks later, he said, okay, I'm done, maybe you want to come outside and look at it. And the mayor said, well, I'm very busy today, but he quickly opened up the window, looked outside, and he thought it was fine. And so he paid the stone. If he would have found the time to come right outside with the stonemason, he wouldn't have got this money. Because he took his revenge. Look at the column in the middle of the fountain. Four dancing children. Well, 3 of them show their face. The 4th one showing his bare butt. What's the mayor's house? This is the biggest insult in the day. You couldn't do worse than that. He showed the world what he thought about the mayor not giving him any money. He didn't give him a deposit, and all the other stonemasons refused to change that. And so they said, if you would have given him some money, this wouldn't have happened. So it's your own fault. Deal with it. That's what he had to do. Now he's well known now. Not for being so generous and spending so much money on the fountain. He will be not forgotten because he was shown the way. Mission accomplished. Well, good. Like he said, he liked our humor. We have a bit of humor, and that's why we have a very special wine bottle. You can see this wine bottle here in the corner, here, this one. And it's different shaped. It has a different shape, and it's called boxboil. There it is. They used to have one outside, but she doesn't have it anymore. So this is the shaped bottles, and it's called boxboil. And boxboil means that's also Billy Goat's scrotum. Why would they do that? Why? Well, in former days, people had glass was very fragile, and you couldn't carry your wine in a bottle around. It was impossible. So they used scrotum actually to fill in wine and to have something outstanding. Some people that people recognize that you have you have a very different wine, that you have a wine from this region. That's why the Franconians decided, okay, our wine will be filled into bottles that are shaped like scrotum, made out of glass nowadays. Okay, so we call them box bottle. And the box bottle is we are the only winters that can only the winters here can fill up the wine into these shaped bottles. If only one Portuguese winery is allowed to do that. All the other ones, nowhere in Europe you're allowed to fill in wine into these bottles, only the Franconians and one Portuguese winery.
Is the wine white?
We have space. How does he look like? He looked like the brother. He looked like the brother. We don't know if he didn't know how to make another face. What I think is more true is first cousin. And this was very common in towns like Miltenberg. We had around, most of the time we had around 1,500 citizens here, and the most we ever had were 3,000 in the Middle Age. Nowadays, of course, more, but back those days. And so it was very common to get married to a really close relative of yours in town. People neither had the money, the time, or the opportunity to look elsewhere for a spouse. So they always had to get married in town, and after 200 years, basically the whole town was related. Yeah, and we are still allowed till today to get married to our first cousins in Germany. I think they should change that, and if we think about my first cousins, thanks, but no thanks. Yes, I mean, really, I don't want to get married to my first cousins, but actually I don't know anybody in my generation or younger who ever did that. Before, maybe, yes, but till the 1960s, it was still very common to get married in town, and we still have communities where you have half the citizenship have basically the same last name, and they're still all related somehow to each other. So I was lucky because my dad's from Hungary and my mom's from Germany, so I was lucky. Then we had to offer it in the warehouse, and it was more money in taxes and fees for him, tolls there. So Miltenberg was basically a money printing machine for the Bishop of Mainz. He actually never lived here, but he got lots of money. The wells went down here in Miltenberg. If you look at the towns and you see a very high city wall around the town, then you know lots of wells was in town. And Miltenberg was very wealthy until the 30-year war, and when that was over in 1648, then the wealth had went down because we were hit by the plague really hard here in Miltenberg, and we were occupied by Swedish troops, so half of the city was destroyed afterwards, and Miltenberg never recovered from that. But that's why Miltenberg exists. It was only basically the fact that the Bishop of Mainz wanted to collect taxes and tolls, and so we are here for money, for tax reasons. Schmuck? Yes. Yeah, in a minute. Okay, I'll go to the schmuck in a minute. I would like to explain this first, and you see that we have a charcoal writing here on the door. You see 2022 C plus N plus B. Caspar, Melchior, Balthasar, the three wise men from the Bible. And we have the Three Kings Day here on the 6th of January. And kids walk around around this day, and they give a blessing to the house. And this is what it is, the blessing to the house for 2022. And they give the blessing to the house, they give a prayer to the house, and the prayer is Christus mansionem benedictate. This means Christ bless this house. You give them some money, and that money is donated for children, for poor children all over into the world. And so I think it's a very nice idea, because kids can really make the experience that they can make a difference into other people's life, into other kids' lives with a very small amount of their time and a very small effort. And so I think it's a nice idea. We should keep it up. And of course you give them some sweets for themselves. We have some, yes, it's a psychologist here. We have some stumbling stones here in front of this building. And the stumbling stones are made a bit higher than the surface around, so you actually stumble over them. And why would we do that? We want you to pay attention to these stones. You see that they have names on them, and these were two ladies that both died in concentration camps. And we have 93 stumbling stones here in Miltenberg in front of buildings where people actually lived. Most of them were Jewish. And it's in remembrance of these people, and we won't forget. And it's very important that we talk about it, that we won't forget what happened back those days. And that's why our kids have to visit, in the 8th grade, they have to visit a concentration camp. You can imagine this is a very intense field trip. Wow. And I would like to tell you a bit about my story, my family. I was married to an American, I was married to a Black American. And I have two mixed children. And you can imagine that both of them went there, and we had, my son, he's the older one, he never talked to him, he was shocked, he was impressed, he didn't want to talk about it. My daughter called in the evening crying her heart out. I'm sure they both realized what would have happened to us, sir, if you what you said. Yeah, no, it's okay now. So if we lived in that time, we all would have died there, because it was not just Jewish people. Most of them were Jewish, no doubt about it. But it was also people with the wrong skin color, wrong political opinion, handicapped people, people that had no family in senior homes, people, gypsies, Armenians, all these people died in concentration camps. Everybody who was inconvenient to the German government died in concentration camps. That's why I think it's so important. It was not my generation fault or my parents' generation fault that this happened, but it's our duty that we avoid that this will happen no matter where in the world, not just in Germany. And I think it's very important that we, fight a bit for our rights and against all these right-wing, movements that are in the world right now. I think that I think it's traumatic, but that's my opinion. But I think we should fight for the right to live, because I mean it doesn't matter if you're black, white, yellow, polka dot. It doesn't matter. You're a person. If you are Jewish, if you are Muslim, if you are a Christian, it doesn't matter. We are all humans, and that's why everybody has a right to live. Well, we have a nice stone work here again on the building, and you see that we have the two German oaks here, and they are symbolizing power and strength and wealth. And then you have the gargoyle on top. And the gargoyle is supposed to scare all the bad people away. And if you look down the street, you can see that we have a Madonna in the building over there. And the Madonna, she's the saint for the family, no matter where they are. She's protecting the family, no matter where they are. Typical, you can see this in a Catholic community, and we were here owned by the Catholic Church, so we are here in a Catholic community. And you can always tell if you're in a Catholic community if you walk through the towns. And sometimes you had a Madonna on the building, and right underneath a small painted gargoyle, because it was always better to be saved on both sides. People really believed this. Really? Yes.
And that was to keep you away?
To scare all the bad luck and the bad people away and to protect the building. This is what the gargoyle is for.
And what does it mean?
It's a gargoyle.
A gargoyle?
A gargoyle. A gargoyle.
Right.
It's just a bad face.
Yeah.
So it's just supposed to, it looks very angry. So it was supposed to scare all the bad luck and all the bad people away. Well, over there somebody wants to know what schmuck means. It's not schmuck, it's schmuck.
Schmuck.
Schmuck. And schmuck means jewelry. Jewelry. And the gentlemen are really lucky today because the schmuck store is not opened. So the ladies can drag their schmuck into the, I would never say that, into the schmuck store. Well, I already told you I was married to an American. There are more different words here. I'm sure you saw lots of signs saying Einfahrt, Ausfahrt.
Yes.
It says entrance, exit, yes. And then sometimes you have signs along the street that says Gute Fahrt. You might have a good ride. So we have many good farts in Germany. And when I first met my husband, we went on the American base. I didn't understand why would they sell poison on post, because gift means poison in German. Oh. I mean, 10 years later, I wish they would have sold gift. He survived, okay? Did you ever go to America? I've never been to the States. Not one day. He was in the army here, and we never went to the States, and he's back there. Probably come back. My daughter's getting married next year, and he promised he'll be here for it's the first time that he sees his kids in 18 years. Oh. Yes. Sad, but
Sweet things are.
There are. Really? I've never met one.
They're all taken.
You see, the beans had bended. We have very sandy soil, and during the flood, the sandy soil is getting washed away, and that's why it's so down. So this you can tell the road from there. See that most of Because you have to walk through the door, through the shop to go upstairs. So there's no second staircase somewhere. So you always have to walk through the shop to go upstairs. And that's why people don't want to, they don't want to live anymore where they work, and that's why most of the shops are Madonna on it. This building is now owned by the Muslim family. It doesn't matter. They have to put the Madonna on the building. They can't take it down. If you want to paint this house, the grey one, if you want to paint this blue, well, 3 days later it will be grey again. Because the city tells you can't pay the fine. Really, you can't pay the fine that you will get if you don't put on the wrong color on it. You have to get a permission basically for everything. Inside you can choose the color. If you want to paint the wall black, then you can do that. But you have to use the right material. That's why you always have to ask if you can do it. And first of all, you see a nice street here. And this gentleman gives out some samples of his nice shop. He got sweet, sour, licorice, salted, and chili. And chili is hot. And sugar-free. And sugar-free for diabetics. So we have, if you want to try something, then you can just try.
Thank you.
The chili is hot. It will burn a hole into the sauce.
Really?
Try it small piece. First, and then you see.
If you can do it.
If you can eat the small piece.
Yes,
Sour? I can't eat.
sour. This is very sour.
In South Germany, we don't eat sweet.
What is that?
In North Germany, they don't eat sweet.
What did you get? What kind?
Sour.
Yeah, I have sour, please.
Sour.
I don't know why. But I
Thank
think
you.
the way they have licorice.
Licorice, salted, unsalted. Salted, yes. We have 45 different sorts of liquid.
Oh, wow.
This is salted one, yeah.
I actually didn't have any problems because we had a very large army base next to us, and there were lots of them. And so it was, I mean, I think my son had some problems when he never talked about it, but my daughter, well, she's like me, so she didn't have any problems. By the way, she's blonde. That's a blonde child. Yeah, it's very curly here. So everybody is treated. You like it?
Yeah.
You got the shop open.
Okay.
You can buy some sweets here. Yeah, yeah. Well, you have some platforms here. And you see that we have the flat mark of 1784. And this is the highest flat this building had ever seen. Actually, we had a higher flat in 1342. That was a story high, very unusual flat because it was in the middle of June. And we don't have June water flats here. But there was 7 days raining cats and dogs, region for about 150 miles around us. Everybody was drowning, and it just didn't stop raining. But usually we have the flood season, like I said, end of December to the middle of February. And this is the highest flood this building had ever seen. And even 2003, we had a knee-high flood here in Miltenberg. And that's why the flood protection wall makes sense. All the shops were damaged here, and lots of damage was done to the private buildings as well from coming down from the This building is it used to be our town hall, the Alte Rathaus, and nowadays we use it for a gallery upstairs. We have a nice room where you can have, where people have anniversaries, parties there, when they have school proms and stuff like that. So it's really. We have some flags on the building. You see that we have the Bavarian flag here, and the Bavarian flag. Please remember that is always white and blue. It is never blue and white. Don't ask me why it's like that. Okay? Then we have the German flag, and then we have the red and white one. This is the Franconian flag.
Bavarian, but white and blue.
Miltenberg was in their time. There was army. It was army and a bit of air defense. And my husband came. He was in the air defense unit, but it was only 50 soldiers there. I mean, it was really, really cool. So we're stuck a bit behind the other groups.
My son was stationed here in Germany.
Where
Kaiserslautern.
Kaiserslautern, but that's a 3-hour ride. So even I have to drive. You will have to drive 4.5, but I drive 3 hours. my daughter went to live there because she was there in the university for a year, so I know how far it is. So, but it's a long ride.
We were in Nuremberg.
Nuremberg, okay. Yeah, Würzburg was the closest here in this area was a huge army base there. Well, if you maybe could come over here.
How long did you live here?
3 years.
Did you like it? I like living here, and I like having the privilege of my ex-husband being an officer.
This is one of the wells.
Being in the army. Not so
I told you already. We only had
did
2
not treat
wells
the enlisted
here in
people.
Miltenberg with fresh water, and now we can go down there.
My husband is a retired Air Force officer. That was my father, so I love the military.
Coming in at the lawn.
So it was very, very dirty in the streets, as you can imagine. And people threw out everything you can imagine out of their windows. Yeah, if you had a full night party, you opened your window, the bomb dropped. Yes? So all of that was in the street, so you can imagine you can't drink water. What did people drink?
Wine, beer.
Actually, you're right. Wine. Beer was before the law of purity came up 500 years ago, was only good 3 to 5 days. Because they threw everything you can imagine into the brewer pot. And if I say everything, I mean everything. Yes, dead cat outside, in it went. So people drank wine. Even children over the age of 3 drank wine. I already told you how strong our Franconian wine is. And back those days it was very dry wine. It's much drier than it is today. And so the mayor gave out the order that only women, can drink only 5 bottles of wine a day. 5 bottles of wine a day. You can imagine how much was drunk. Nobody was sober in town anymore. So men can drink as much as they want to, but women only 5 bottles of wine a day. If you wash yourself with water from here, what happens? You had scratches, scar, cuts, you get infections from the dirty water. And the biggest problem was not just the dirty water, the biggest problem was that we only had one big wash tub in town, one big one. And they didn't renew the water. They didn't know about the bacteria back those days. So they didn't know about the bacteria, so they didn't renew the water every time it was used. So they just filled up whatever steamed out was filled up. And so they used that in very dirty, very ugly water. Yeah. Nowadays we would say we would never touch their water. Yeah, but now back then they didn't know. So they were really nice, especially in the winter time. It was nice to sit somewhere nice, warm and cozy. It's very damp inside of the building. It's very cold. Only one heat, and that was the kitchen stove. And we had no other heating system, so it was very nice to sit somewhere nice and cozy. And I can guarantee it was not just husbands and wife together in that town. Yeah, it was very huge, and the child that was born afterwards wasn't guaranteed to be the husband. So they gave syphilis and other diseases to each other because they weren't faithful to their loved ones, and so it was very difficult. If they washed themselves, they got all the infections and all the diseases. So they stopped washing themselves for about 200 years. You couldn't sneak up on anybody because you smell. People just smell. So why didn't they go to the river? It's so close. Well, the river wasn't as deep as it is today, so it was it was basically, in the summer it was completely dried out. In the winter it was a solid ice block. And if you're occupied by enemy troops, the city was occupied often by enemy troops. They couldn't open up one gate, otherwise the enemy troops would have came inside. So it was not very easy to get to fresh water, and they just had to walk. They would have to walk all the way back to the market square, or even back down there to get some fresh water. And that's why everybody drank one.
They should go to the river.
They should go to where?
To the river. They should.
To the river?
Yeah.
No, I think the river was much. No, but actually. Yeah.
Looking for
On here, then okay, go in the right direction.
He's quite talented.
We'll wait.
Like I said, we have a building here with two different dates on it. And it says 1623 over the door and 1606 underneath the window. Which date is younger?
1606.
No, 1606 is not younger. 1623 is younger. I can guarantee you the house wasn't built upside down. But in 1620, the city councillor gave out an order that everyone had to change their ground floors into sandstone for flood protection. They had lots of problems here during the floods, that people died in their collapsing buildings. Because you know how the water is, it brings rocks, trees, the water has lots of pressure, parts of other buildings. So lots of houses collapsed during the floods and people died. And that, to avoid that, that's why everyone had to change their ground floors into sandstone. This is why we call these buildings only half timbered. If you look at the building next door, you see that we have beams all the way to the ground floor. The difference there is we have a basement. And that was protection enough, so this house wouldn't collapse because of the basement, but all the buildings without the basement, they had to change. That's why they pushed up the whole building with beams here and built the sandstone underneath in 1620. So that was lots of manpower, lots of knowledge needed to do that, but all these buildings are built basically like that. Lots of these buildings had been changed afterwards. This is why, like I said, why we call these buildings only half timbered. I'm sorry, there's a car coming, sir. There's a car coming before you sit down. Sometimes there's a car, sir. Ma'am, there's a car. Just listen. The water will come up the side. That's why I showed you the flood box. Okay. Or the city water. No. So the water will come up the side. If you look down the street now, you can see the lovely castle of Miltenberg up there. And the castle is very small because the bishop actually never lived here. And he always owned it until he had lost a small fight with a neighborhood prince, the Prince of Leiningen. And the Prince of Leiningen agreed that he will take the castle instead of taking money because he had a widowed sister-in-law. And so she moved in, and she later got married to the Duke of Kent. And you can imagine they lived here in Miltenberg, nothing to do, young love, romantic candlelights. She got pregnant real quick. And they rushed back to England because the Duke of Kent's child was not supposed to be born in Germany. A little girl was born, later known as Queen Victoria. So she was made in Germany. Nowadays, we have a museum up there for religious icons and modern art. The city owns this castle now. It looks very lovely now. You have a great view from the town, but it's very steep to climb up there. That's why, I mean, I can recommend it, but you'll need a bit of time. And it's really, you have a really good view up there. And when I grew up, it didn't look that good. I mean, it was very old, and nobody took care of it, and then the city took over, spent lots of money on it, and now it's a really nice building.
We have to be back at Quest 46, is that right?
Yes, yes. Good. One of the arches, this is one of the, this used to be part of the city wall. I mean, in former days there were no buildings above because of the, I saw that. I don't know why they are driving here in the pedestrian area all the time, but
Maybe they're lost.
yeah, this used to be part, and now people took advantage of the wall that was already built, and then they built the house above later on afterwards. Well, over here we got the most expensive building of Miltenberg compared to the size. And you see it's a really lovely building. It was very expensive to build because they needed to buy the permission from the bishop to chop all the needed oak trees down in the forest. And so you can imagine they needed lots of wood here with all the ornamentation on it. There's almost no plastering in between. So they used lots of wood here. And this house got even more expensive because the lady of the house, she was nagging and bragging until the husband gave in to build her the small oriel, the small tower here in front of the building. Why would she need that? Any idea?
See the neighbors.
You're absolutely right. Curiosity. That was the only reason for it. Because, I mean, she was able to hide behind the windows. She didn't have to hang her head like a pig outside of the windows like all the other ones had to do. And so she was able to see the neighbors here on both sides with the small windows. She just opened the small windows and saw everything. She saw who was cheating on who was talking to, who was going with who.
What's the saying for?
The saying is basically saying it's a butcher shop here, and it says if you eat enough sausage and meat, you stay healthy, and what's good for your health is good for my wealth. But like I said, I mean, you can see that we have middle-age windows here. You see the yellow windows. They are made like middle-age windows, and actually the two on top of the roof are still middle-age windows, original middle-age windows. And they couldn't produce clear glass. It was always brownish or yellow, and you saw the pattern from the wooden boxes. And it was very expensive to buy windows. It was very expensive to have windows. And why to have? Window taxes. They had to pay window taxes. And if you think about it, it makes sense. We pay television fees, right? Well, they paid window taxes, entertainment taxes here. I mean, they had perfect television, perfect theater in the evening when they found the time to look outside, and during the day they had the windows open. And back those days, women died on the spot, instant death, if they missed any of the latest gossip. Nothing else to talk about. So that was. They always had to be informed. That's why they always had the windows open, so with the radio. So it was perfect here. So that's why they always had to wear window taxes. The house was built 1650, and it was the student of the master builder of our next building here in the middle of the street. You can already see it here. This is our hotel giant. And the student said, okay, I can do better than even the master, and make a really nice example of buildings here in this. But the Hotel Giant is the most important building of Miltenberg because this is the oldest hotel in Germany. It was mentioned the first time in 1148, even before the castle was built, before the city started to develop. This building was already here, and it got extended 1590. They got the permission to chop down 100 more oak trees. The bishop gave it to them because he wanted to have a nice representative in here in Miltenberg, and so they had room for more than 100 horses in the stables afterwards, and so it was really a huge inn. You can see that we have an arch here on the ground floor. This is where the carriages actually drove inside into the building, and so the noble ladies didn't have to step outside into the dirt, into the mud, and did get their skirts dirty in the dirty streets. So it was really a noble place, and every earl, every king who ever traveled through Miltenberg, of course, stayed in the Giant. And the last king came here in 1958. It was a king from the United States of America. I'm sure you know who it was. Of course. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll himself. He came here for 2 days and 2 nights, never paid the bill. But I'm sure the landlord didn't mind because the girls from the surrounding 15 miles, they all came here to the Giant to see Elvis Presley once in their lifetime in person. They needed food, drinks and restaurants, and afterwards all the girls wanted to sleep in the same bed as Elvis Presley did. So I'm sure he had his 10 rooms where Elvis Presley is sleeping. So he made his share, not much of a complaint here. If you look at the sign in the middle of the street, at the hanging from the sign of the Giant, you see the star underneath. You know what the star is for? Nope. Nope. This is a trade sign. This is a this is a trade sign.
Somebody told us that. What was it?
For the
Beer?
local brewery.
Brewery. Yeah.
The Giant was the only place here in Miltenberg that were allowed to brew beer. Like I already told you, beer was only good 3 to 5 days. Before the law of purity, and you actually could poison yourself or kill yourself if you drank the spoiled beer. And that's why you can imagine every time the star was out, people knew fresh beer was available. And all the other wine bars, taverns, restaurants went out of business as long as the star was out. And I'm sure you heard about a very bad time in the history of Europe, not just Germany, witchcraft trials. Most of them had an economic reason. If you had something your neighbor wanted, you just gave the authorities the hint that you saw the gentleman flying in the moon. Either for a better house, better going business, better looking wife, something. Yeah, so this is what happened here in 1623 to the landlord of the Giant. He got accused of using witchcraft. And how can he prove that he was not guilty? He was put in a wooden cage down into a well. And if he swam with the wooden cage, you weren't guilty. Well, now down there he had 2 choices, drown or confess to be guilty. I think he made the wrong decision because he said he was guilty. And it got even worse because him and his whole family burned on the stack right in front of the building.
Oh.
The same story repeated again 3 years later. But this time I don't feel sorry for the people, even that they got burned as well. Because they were the one who turned the first ones in. You got rewarded if you did such a good job to the community. Money, artwork, farmland was always taken by church. Because, I mean, they had to be paid. They had to imprison you, they have to do the trial, they have to torture you, they even had to feed you. So that's why they had to be paid. So all of that was taken by church, but they had no use of the house, and that's why always the house was given to the person who gave the hint, basically. And that's why I said serves them well, they shouldn't have done it the first time. We only had 300 witchcraft trials here in Miltenberg. We actually burned only 63 of them. Only 63, but it was very mild compared to other towns. If you go to Wurzburg tomorrow, you will hear completely different numbers. It was the worst place to be was in Wurzburg, especially in the 17th century. It was ridiculous there. I think they killed half of the citizenship of Miltenberg because of witchcraft trials. They were.
Did they have guilds those days? They have guilds for businesses and Craftsman and stuff.
If you guild signs, if you have the guild signs you have guild signs for the bakers, you had guild signs for the brewers, you had guild signs for the butcher. The butchers is on the building here, and the pretzel is the guild sign for the bakers. This is typical guild signs for the cafes. You have a tree cake. Usually a person with a tree cake, that's the guild signs for these, because people couldn't read and write back those days, and that's why you always had the sign outside on the building. If you want to if you want to stop, then we can stop here. If not, we can keep on walking. For me, it makes no difference. You decide. Keep walking.
Okay.
Keep walking. Because they had, everybody knew where they were, but nobody wanted to live next door, basically. This is the second arch. This is where the carriage drove outside at the door. They did, and all these people were unfortunately all of them died in unique statue here with the whole Holy Family, very unique. Usually the Madonna is only there with the child on her arm or by herself. Here we have the whole Holy Family. Underneath the top window we have another guild sign. You see that there is a pretzel.
Yeah,
Up
bakery.
there, this is a baker's house. This is the baker's house. This used to be the baker's house. Nowadays we have a travel agency here because the young generation didn't feel like getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning anymore. That's why they changed it. But we have the pretzel still on the building, and the shape of the pretzel got invented by monks. Monks used to pray like this all the time, and you can imagine how heavy your arm gets and how cold your fingers get here, especially during the winter time. So one cold winter night, one monk said, why don't we put our hands into our long sleeves? And if you look at that, this is the shape of a pretzel. And so they kept praying like this, and after a while they recognized it doesn't matter how we pray, it only matters what we pray in our heart. God doesn't mind. And so we still have convents to pray like this till today. During the time of Lent, monks always drank beer. They were the only one beside the local brewery who were allowed to brew beer. And they ate a round piece of bread with salt on it. And it was the bread for Lent, and that's when he was the baker of the convent, so he started to shape the bread for Lent as they prayed. So the pretzel is basically a symbol for a monk's prayer. It has enough room for the Holy Trinity to go through, and so it was a perfect sign for the bakers to take over, and that's why we have it as a trade sign now here on the buildings. And if you look at the building, you see that we have WK, Walter König, this is the initials of the first owner. Then you have 3 roses there. Any idea what the roses are for?
Children?
Yes, only sons. You will never find a sign outside of a building because, I mean, girls were just a pain, they just cost money. So it was really, really difficult to have lots of girls because you have to give them money, cow, farmland, something when they got married. So it was always very difficult to have lots of girls. So he was very proud of his 3 boys. If you turn around and look up, you can see that we have 3 white faces here on the ground floor, on the first floor, on the building. Each face is a symbol for 6 sons, 27 children, 18 boys.
Wow.
Not one lady can give birth to 27 children. I'm sure the gentleman turned out to be very old. Yes, because I mean, not one. He got remarried every time his wife deceased, giving birth to a child or deceased of other reasons. So I think it was not a very pleasant neighborhood because, I mean, he was very proud with his 18, but this one was also proud with his 3. So I'm sure the gentlemen didn't like each other too much, but I actually feel sorry for the lady of the house. She had never-ending work. It never ended. So what did ladies do to get away from the work? The only thing that actually helped was dying, yes, but then the life was over, so bad choice. But if they were very tired, two very tired ladies went together into a pub and they got drunk. Afterwards, they went into the street and they got into a fist fight with each other because they were put in for 3 weeks into jail for that. Yes, I mean, the jail was not very pleasant, only sour wine to drink and dry bread to eat, but still no work. No work. So they had time to sleep, they just slept for 3 weeks. Bad luck for the oldest daughter. I mean, she had to take over all the work at home, but mom didn't care too much about that in that situation. And some ladies managed to go several times a year into jail because they just were fed up with all the work at home. So it was the spa of the mid-range. Well, I hope you enjoyed my small tour here through